It's Di here doing match preview duties this week ahead of the Newcastle against Liverpool match. Should be a good game, I think. Really looking forward to it, especially after kind of a funny start to the season. Obviously a great performance against Villa and then kind of stifled a little bit by Manchester City. So really looking forward to the game. I think we've got every chance in terms of getting something from the game, hopefully all 3 points. If I start talking about Liverpool a little bit, I think they've got a lot of creative players. We all know that, people like Salah, but I also think in midfield they're a little bit light, especially defensively, and I think that's really where we're going to have to try and control the game and get beyond their kind of midfield three and utilise the space being behind, because they haven't really got a proper holding midfielder. It'd be interesting to see if that new lad comes in from Stuttgart and plays in that holding role and kind of maybe looks to firm things up a bit more. Obviously McAllister will play because his red card got overturned correctly. In my view, it was never red in the first place. Bit of a daft tackle, leaving your foot in there, but certainly not a red card for me. I think we have got to improve also in terms of our performance against Manchester City. There were elements of the game that I think we did really well. But I think there's a few key players that have to kind of step up, or at least be willing to try something different. Almiron is the one for me, who I know he's had a great year. He was playing them, probably the best team on the planet, but kept trying to cut back in, and it just wasn't happening for him. He needs to try and gamble every now and again on his right hand side and do the thing that the opposition don't want. The opposition don't want him to do. I also think that it's going to be interesting to see if Joe Linton plays. Hopefully he will, and hopefully has a better game than he did against Manchester City. His physicality is something that is going to make a big difference for us in the middle of midfield, but we all know that he's an exciting player to have on the team, and I think that physicality, the pace, but how he uses the ball and how he can drive at people with the ball is something I think we lack without him, because he does have that physicality and that extra pace when he's running with the ball as well. I also think it's important that he comes back in because of the replacements on the weekend. And again, I appreciate it was against Man City, blah, blah, blah. But I think when you look at the people who came back into the match, people like Anderson, people like Longstaff, even Harvey Barnes really didn't actually have much of an impact. So for those reasons, I think the side will remain unchanged. I think the one position that's going to end up changing soon is going to end up being the left back position. I think we've spent all that money on Lewis Hall, and I imagine he will come into the lineup relatively soon. I don't think this game will be the one, but I think he'll be around and about it. I think there's no way you spend all that money on someone for them to kind of bench warm for Dan Burn. And I feel for Dan Burn because I think he's a reliable player, and I don't think he gets done very often, but it goes to show that, the way that he was occupied, if you like, by Phil Foden in the City game demonstrates really how important it is we have someone who can do both sides of the game. It's important that he's kind of being shackled or shackling someone, but he needs to go off and make a bit of a difference in an attacking sense as well. I think ultimately that midfield battle is where the game is going to be won or lost. I think the competitive nature, shall we say, of the Liverpool side and the talent they possess, I think is going to be the thing that make this a really fascinating game, and how quickly and easily they can get the ball out to people like Salah. Obviously lots of stories going on online. I'm recording this on Thursday, and there's lots of stories going around online about him trying to force himself a move to Saudi Arabia, and he's got his people on it and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see again if he actually plays or is in the squad, or excuse me, what the situation is looking ahead to that. Obviously it'd be a big bonus for us if he didn't play. I think looking at it from our perspective, I think equally the midfield is the most important part for us. Bruno is the one I wanted to talk about for two reasons. One, the interesting social media situation he found himself in this week, and I totally back Bruno. I think he was absolutely spot on. I think we shouldn't be kind of digging players out at this stage of the game, certainly having not played against Manchester City, just played against Manchester City, where we've got European football and Champions League football and all that stuff to come after a brilliant year last year. I thought he was absolutely spot on. So I think, he's someone who I think will be ready to produce a performance. I think he feels like maybe he's due one to give a good performance, but I think we need that from him. For all the agreeing I'm doing there about how he played on the weekend, what he said on social media, the way he played on the weekend, I think He's certainly not in danger of losing his place or anything like that. But I think with Tonali coming in, you can really see the levels that we're striving for, or aiming for here. And to be fair, Tonali didn't have his best game against Man City either. But again, you can see that the level we're aiming for. And he's a little bit one touch to slow the ball down, a little bit one touch too many, slowing the ball down a bit. I think sometimes when he plays against a Manchester City type team, I think he's desperate to prove how good he is, and that desperation can sometimes make him do things he wouldn't naturally do. So hopefully, that he can have that coached out of him a little bit, but also help him kind of be ready for the game this weekend. I think that midfield battle, as I say, is key, really. I think the other thing is we've got to be a little bit more cautious in certain areas. I love how high we press and how we do that, but I think that's got to be improved on as well. I think we did that much better in the second half against Man City, who did start to tire in that game. But again, ultimately, we've always got to remember that we were playing against Manchester City. In terms of what I think the score is going to be, it's going to be very, very tricky. It's going to be a tough game. They've obviously spent a lot of money, got new players in. It's tough. I think that we've got a very, very good chance of winning the match. I think 2-1 Newcastle is my prediction. I think that's a little bit more head than heart. I think maybe 1-1 is maybe a bit more realistic, but I think also we've got to, if we're going to try and compete against these teams and get back in the Champions League again next season, then home games against these kind of top four or the big sides, we've got to go and get points from them. I think going to Anfield's tricky, so I think we've got to do something when we play them at home. And I think our home record has been so good recently. So yeah, I want to see more of that dynamism, and I want to see more of that exciting football that we saw against Aston Villa. And I think that's going to be the thing that makes a real difference for us in terms of how the game will pan out. So yeah, really looking forward to the game. I'm going to say 2-1 Newcastle. I think, as I say, Bruno's going to be the man whose his form started to turn around, and he's due a good performance. So I'm going to say he's going to be the man to watch on the weekend. So up the Mags, fingers crossed for 3 points.